Hey folks, it's Michael with the CCERP podcast, E for Ecology. Part of that, of course, is plants, animals, studying them, their interrelationships, their nature, what's the nature of the animal, how does it live, how does it move and eat so it can survive and thrive in the world. To do some of that, if we really want to understand, understanding brings appreciation. It brings wisdom, as what Alexander Pope said, something like in his poem on learning or something. Drink deep from the Pierian springs, if I pronounce that right. For there shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, and drinking deep sobers us again. Actually, he said sobers us largely or something like that, but sobers us again. Okay, so we really want to dig into things, know it. If we understand things better, there wouldn't have been this big thing recently about the mountain lion allegedly stalking the jogger. But if we understand the world or appreciate it, we can get out in it, know how things work. Understanding brings enjoyment and security and confidence. So to do some of that, we're going to look at today animals, zoology, animal tracking, using game cams to study animals. And joining us is, unless I butcher the name, Janet Pesaturo. Did I say that again? Right, Janet?
You said that right. That's
Sweet.
right.
Okay. Could you say hi to the folks and introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, everybody. So I'm Janet Pesaturo, and I am really into wildlife tracking and camera trapping, and I'm honored to be interviewed on this podcast today.
Thank you. But could you tell folks about your background and your interests and what got you into tracking and maybe any stories from your childhood?
Okay. Oh, childhood stuff. Oh, okay. So we're going that far back. Right. I need to lay on the couch here. So I grew up in Massachusetts in a somewhat densely populated blue-collar neighborhood in a family that had little interest in the outdoors. And it wasn't the happiest situation.
Sorry.
And so when I was little, my cat and the plants and animals, the wild plants and animals that were in and around our yard were kind of my world, my little world. Cool. That gave me comfort.
Nice.
And I saw education as the way out of what I thought was not a great situation. So I was a very studious kid once I reached high school. And I was always interested in the life sciences, any kind of organism. And I went to medical school, and I became a psychiatrist. And I did that for maybe about 10 years. I ended up leaving that because I had something called Meniere's syndrome, which is an inner ear disease.
Oh, yeah,
and I also had little kids. Yeah, you're
Huh.
familiar with that. Yeah. So I had that, and I had little kids to take care of. So it just became too much to keep working. And I honestly did not love my job anyway, so once I left, I never looked back to that. But in terms of, wildlife, while I was in medical training, my husband and I were kind of in very demanding educational and career situations, so we didn't have a lot of free time. But on the weekends, we would, just for fun and to get exercise and to, do something different, we would attend like various programs that were put on by our local Audubon centers here. They have all kinds of, birding, tracking, whatever. And, so I had an interest in it, but I never really had the time to put into it back then. And what really got me into tracking was there was one all-day program we attended. This was, more than 30 years ago now. It was an all-day program in western Massachusetts in a recently protected forest. That's all I remember. I remember we were the first group from the public that was allowed to set foot on this property.
Wow.
I wish I could remember the name of the land. I wish I could remember where it was. I wish I could remember the the instructor's name, but I can't remember any of that. But it was just a completely enchanting day. Before that, I knew nothing about wildlife tracking, and this guy just showed us stuff that it just blew me away, that there was this whole other world going on there. That was so complicated, so much going on among the animals outdoors. It was in the winter, so it was snow tracking.
Cool.
And it was a really just spectacular, beautiful day. So we just had a wonderful day, and I always, when people ask me, like, what was the best day of your life, I often say that day. It was just so much fun.
Makes sense.
And then, by that time, I really wanted to spend more time on learning about wildlife, but I was still, I think that was while I was in my residency, medical residency program, somewhat time around there, so I just didn't have a lot of time. But then when I stopped working and was full-time home with my kids, I had to find things to do with the kids that would be interesting and fun and get them outside and also interesting to me. So the kinds of things we did were tracking and birding and, various wildlife outdoor-related things. And so I kind of sneakily pursued my own interests while I was also kind of entertaining them, and
Nice.
That's how that was. So,
cool. But what kind of things did you do? Did the kids enjoy it? Like, what kind of memorable experiences?
So like one of the things we did was we set up a bluebird nesting box trail. We my husband built I think it was 30 nest boxes, and we all went out and set them up, and then the kids would monitor them with me. So we did that, and I started a kids' nature club, which kind of revolved around that, checking the nest boxes and other things too. We did other kinds of outings. And then when my daughter was 9, she's the oldest, when she was 9, we did this, this wildlife tracking program with Sue Morris in Vermont. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but she used to, I think she's just recently retired, she used to train community groups to learn to identify, track, and sign so that they could provide data, like wildlife presence absence data, to local conservation organizations. So I got together a local group of adults, and my daughter was allowed to come with us. She was the only child to ever have done this program.
Cool.
So the two of us went and did that along with our local group, and that was the first time I really, kind of delved into tracking in particular. And since then, I've been a fanatic.
Yeah.
That was around. I think that was 2005 that we did that program, and since then, it's I've been completely obsessed.
Cool. What kind of animals did you identify in that?
So it was in the Northeast here, so we learned to recognize, track, and sign of all the local species, which were deer, moose, bears, bobcats, fishers, foxes, coyotes, and then, the less charismatic animals, the small ones like various squirrels and mice and, small mammals, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But Sue Moore's focused mostly on the larger animals, because those are the animals that are sort of umbrella species for us here in the Northeast. Because we were supposed to be providing data for conservation organizations, they would want to know, they're more interested in the presence of the larger species, because if the larger species are present, then that there's sufficient habitat for them. If there's sufficient habitat for large species, then under that umbrella, lots of other smaller species also have adequate habitat.
Makes sense.
So that was kind of the focus of that experience.
And that was mainly on identifying the sign and not trailing or anything like that?
No, it wasn't trailing. It was just identifying, track, and sign. Sue had a specific protocol that she wanted her trainees to use. We actually never used that protocol because it wasn't the land trusts that we provided data for weren't particularly interested in that. So we just did what was useful to them. And we didn't provide, we were, first and foremost, we were more of a recreational tracking group. We all loved to track for fun. But, just to feel like we had a purpose, we sometimes provided data for local land trusts, when requested. Mm-hmm. So that's how that was.
Cool.
Um,
And then for now, do you do mostly camera capture or animal tracking or both?
well, both, because the tracking is really what informs where you put the camera to get interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there are people who don't really know how to track, and they put just cameras in random spots or on, animal trails. They know how to identify an animal trail. You can do it that way, but if you really get into it and you really want to use your cameras to just get interesting behaviors on video or answer whatever questions you might have about their behavior, or just get really, cool photos and cool videos, the more you know about tracking and recognizing animal sign, then the much better you'll be at placing your cameras to get interesting things. Like, for example, if you know what a game trail looks like, you can just put your camera there and you can get deer and coyotes and foxes walking by and maybe a bobcat. So you get animals walking by. But if you wanted to, say, look at the scent marking behavior of bears, you're going to have to know how to recognize what a bear marking tree looks like, or a bear marking trail looks like, and you'll have to find those elements. So the more you know about tracking, the better your camera trapping. So for me, the camera trapping kind of grew out of tracking, and it was a really cool way to finally get to see what I could only imagine through tracking. So when you track, you look for tracks and sign, and you're kind of imagining in your mind's eye what this animal's doing, how it's behaving. But with the cameras, you get to see it, which was just blew my mind away.
Yeah, the secret life.
Wow, it's real.
But yeah, so it's like with a lot of people can recognize like a road. Look, there's a highway. Oh, look, there's maybe an animal trail. It doesn't take much real understanding or depth. Not to knock it, it's like a good thing. Yeah. But just to point out use that as a contrast or a foil for what you're doing. You've got to know the nature of the animal and a little bit about the ecology, just as Tom Brown and some others say. Tom Brown Jr. How do you put it? An animal is an instrument played by its environment. So you got to know about the environment and how it's played by the animal, the interrelationship, know what's possible. So tracking is not merely like the way you're doing it, tracking and trailing. It's getting into not just identifying a picture, like when we're young, cow, goat. It's like,
yes, exactly. And for some people, tracking is like that, and that's totally fine. Yeah, but I was always driven by, I want to understand more. I want to know more about the animal. I want to know how it interacts with its environment. I want to see what it's doing. So I do, take it a lot further than just, recognizing the tracks and sign. And it's true that the more you already know about the animal, the more you will learn from tracking and camera trapping, because you'll know where to look. You'll think of further questions to ask. So it can go deeper and deeper and deeper. It kind of never ends, which is cool. They're hobbies that never get boring. I think for that reason, there are so many layers of complexity and always so much more to know. And a lot of it, frankly, what I love particularly about camera trapping is so much about these animals is unknown to science, and any person with a cheap trail camera can kind of be doing cutting-edge research if you're just curious and persistent, because you're getting to see what animals do, and that's not all known yet. We don't all know all of that yet. There's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Or just like I think on iNaturalist, there's some common folk, so-called, that maybe discover new species or find a species that was thought to not have been in an area for a long time. Yeah,
and find a new behavior. Find a new type of scent marking behavior, which is something that I've found a few times.
Cool.
A couple things that I've never found in any books or tracking books or anything. Cool. So that was pretty cool.
Now, are you do you have any certification in tracking or camera work or what?
Do I have certification? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
For tracking, I am CyberTracker certified. I forget all their different categories. I think it's track and sign level 3.
Cool.
As far as I know, for camera trapping, there isn't any certification system.
Not yet.
Do it.
Are you writing the book on it?
Well, not certification. No, I'm kind of not into that. My book is more on teaching people exactly what we were just talking about. The basics you need to know about the animal's track and sign and behavior, so that you can go out and find good places to put your camera, and to sort of stimulate people to think about what questions they could ask, about whatever species they're interested in.
How many pages is your book?
306 pages.
Cool. Did you ever think you'd write something like that?
No, it's a funny story. So when I started tracking, we started the Sue Morse programs back in 2005, I was taking photos obsessively of every nice track and all interesting animal sign that we found. And for years, my friends were joking with me, saying, assuming that I was sometime going to write some kind of tracking related book. They would say, when you write your book, or is that going to go in your book? And I said, what are you talking about? I'm not going to write a book. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not doing. But then it got to the point where I had accumulated such a large library of photos, and some of them were pretty decent quality. I thought, well, why not? And the focus on camera trapping, the reason for that was that when I got my first trail camera, I was kind of in my beginning stages of tracking, so I didn't know a lot about the different species, and I wasn't that great at identifying track and sign yet. And so it wasn't obvious to me how to determine where to put the camera. So of course what I did is I searched for books on it, thinking that, well, somebody must have written a book on this already. Trail cameras have been around for a long time, so somebody must have written a book. Like I was envisioning a field guide, going species by species, that would tell me how to find good camera placements. And I was really surprised. There is no book like that. There's no book like that. Wow. Can you believe it? So
No.
Over time, I accumulated what one needed to write such a book. So essentially what I did is I wrote the book that I wanted to read years ago, but that didn't exist. Yeah.
Is it only hard copy, Audible, or like what?
It's available in paperback and on Kindle
cool.
on Amazon.
Cool.
Yeah.
How's it sectioned and chaptered?
So I have to even flip back myself to remember how to do this. There is an introductory part where I talk about things like the basics of trail cameras and the basics of track measurement and that kind of thing. And then the rest of it is organized species by species. So, there's a bobcat chapter, there's a coyote chapter, there's a bear chapter, a moose chapter, and so forth. And it covers almost 40 species. Cool. And it's kind of, laid out like a field guide, with range maps and a picture of the animal, and then I go into the tracks and trail patterns, diet and scent marking and things like that, and habitat, breeding behavior, and then for each species I have a couple pages that's called camera trapping tips, where I kind of make sense of all those facts and put it together into a story and give some advice as to what to look for and when to look for it, what season of the year to look for it to get interesting behaviors. And for people that are really ambitious, I also, for a lot of the species, I talk about either rarely observed or poorly understood behaviors so that they can go look for those things and kind of really be doing cutting-edge research. Because for me, that's what it's kind of about, is empowering anybody who's curious and persistent, who just wants to learn stuff, to do real research, to learn, really learn new stuff, discover new stuff.
Cool. So it's about 6 to 8 pages per animal?
That sounds about right, yeah.
All mammals? Is it any birds, like barred owl or anything?
I have a few birds, and I have 5 birds. I have wild turkeys, the ruffed grouse, the great blue heron, ruby-throated hummingbird, and the pileated woodpecker. Oh, cool. And the reason I chose those...
Is it pileated or pileated?
Oh, every time I say it one way, somebody corrects me and tells me it's the other way, so I don't know which way.
I say pileated, but I've never looked it up. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I've loved. Some people say that, but when I've said that, I've been told, "Oh, it's pileated." So whatever way you want to say it, it's fine with me. So I chose for the birds. I chose birds that spend time low enough to the ground so that people don't need to climb 30 feet up in a tree to put the camera to. But of course, you could do that if you wanted to. You could monitor bird activity by putting cameras facing tree cavities high in a tree, or just up in a tree in general, just in case a bird builds its nest near there. But yeah, I tried to make it. I tried to choose species that most people would want to and would be able to camera trap. And also, I know a lot of hunters have trail cameras, so I try to include the game species like turkey and grouse, as well as the game mammals that they are interested in. So, I had limited pages to deal with. I wasn't supposed to go much over 300 pages, and I just picked the species that I thought would be of most interest to the kind of people that would be interested in such a book.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that are in the Bobcat chapter?
Bobcat. So, of course, I go through its tracks and sign, and I'd have to reread my own chapter to know exactly. But in terms of how to find the bobcat, so you want to, for when you're dealing with a predator, one of the things. Well, let me back up. For any large, medium to large animal, many of them will use game trails. So there's always that option, just choosing game trails. And if you can recognize their tracks and scat, all the better, because then you can determine, not only is this a game trail, but a bobcat is using it. So that's one option. But other things to think about is, where is their food? They go to where the food is. So one of their favorite foods, certainly in my part of the country, is rabbits, either cottontails or snowshoe hares. So wherever you see a high density of their favorite foods, snowshoe hares and cottontails, there's a good bet that a cat will come prowling through there. So you want to kind of investigate those areas in decent tracking conditions, if you can, and see if you have any bobcat tracks. And once you determine that a cat's in the area, just putting it near its favorite food is a pretty good strategy. If you find, I don't know how technical you want to get into the tracking, but if you can find a scat with a scrape, and that means it's a scent marking area, cats sometimes return to those, so you just target the scrape, and there's a high likelihood of getting the cat doing that. Then they also like, the kind of habitat they like is dense brush, and that's where the rabbits are too. And they also like cliffy areas, caves, that kind of thing, because they use those caves as dens and as resting places, and they're also hunting the mice and other small animals that kind of hide in the crevices. So they're very attracted to those areas. And the other thing that almost everything in my part of the country likes is beaver wetlands. And bobcats spend a lot of time hunting around the edges of beaver wetlands, just because there's a very high prey density there. And they also are very likely to use beaver dams as bridges as an easy way to cross the water. Yeah,
they don't go after beaver though, right?
They would go after beaver kits, and they might go after an adult beaver if they have a really good opportunity, but it's unlikely that they're going to get up in the morning and say, I'm going beaver hunting, because that's not their main prey. But if they're out near a beaver wetland and they happen to have a really good opportunity to catch one off guard, or there's one that's injured or sick or whatever, of course they will go for it. They catch muskrats around here are in beaver wetlands, and bobcats catch those. So there's a lot of prey, and there's even rodents sometimes living in the nooks and crannies of beaver dams and lodges, and bobcats will hunt there. They'll even kind of sometimes sit on top of beaver lodges and use it as kind of a lookout, an elevated spot to look out of, and they'll scent mark on top of those. So there's a lot of opportunity around beaver wetlands for bobcats.
And you were talking about using the dams to cross?
Yes, yeah. What I tell people who are just getting into trail cameras, if you don't know much about tracking yet, but you have beavers in your area, a really good place to put the camera is to face a beaver dam. Just target a beaver dam, because you get a really good bang for the buck. It's almost immediate gratification because not only bobcats, a lot of animals use those dams as bridges.
Cool.
And other animals are attracted to the dams for other reasons. Like, for example, the beaver itself is going to be working on its dam if it's an active beaver pond. Otters will often haul out right near beaver dams, and they hunt for fish right around beaver dams. So they're kind of little biodiversity hotspots, and a great place to start if you just want to get something on your camera and you're not a great tracker yet. Start there, and that's likely to get people hooked because once you see what you can get there, they're I want to keep doing this. I need another camera. they get obsessed with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what are maybe the top 5 foods, animals, prey for the bobcat?
They really vary. Bobcats. Someone wrote a book on bobcats called Bobcat: Master of Survival, and the point of the book is that bobcats are so incredibly adaptable, and that's the key to their survival. And part of that adaptability is they'll eat almost anything, from insects to reptiles, amphibians, small mammals, medium-sized mammals, and they're even, at certain times and in certain places, they can even focus on deer. That's not I don't want to say this and have people walk away thinking, oh, bobcats, hunt deer on a regular basis. That's not the way it is, but there is the occasional study that shows them that in certain places they do focus mostly on deer. So they can hunt anything. Overall, if you looked across, the country, probably the most common things are rabbit species. In the West, wood rat species, kangaroo rats, squirrels, tree squirrels here. They hunt mice, of course. So on average, it's those small mammals.
Mm-hmm. So they're important.
They'll even hunt snakes. I mean, they'll hunt anything. They're very, very adaptable.
But important for our ecology to keep it safe for humans, good for human ecology, keep the rodents under control. Rodents spreading disease a lot.
Absolutely. So they perform their service. It's useful to us.
Yeah, snakes, owls, hawks, bobcats, coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more important to human health than a lot of people realize, I think, but just because the way education is, what people know, what they don't. But cool.
Yeah, no, I think people have kind of lost touch with that. Those are things that people would have realized when we were hunter-gatherers or even when we were subsistence farmers because, our dependence on nature was obvious. It was sort of an everyday thing, but most of us don't really interact with nature that much. We just kind of live in parallel with it, and we don't really think of those connections. So it's important to remind people of that.
And then I think, without that knowledge, people maybe studying history don't get what might be why some ancient people worshipped some creature. It wasn't until I got into really studying more biology and ecology and stuff, I thought, knowing the role of snakes, it's like, I wonder if, since some people in South America worship the snake, like how much was strength, how much was it maybe at one time in their history, some of them were scared and killed a bunch of snakes, and then there were more rats, and so they might think, like, the snake god brought a plague of rats upon us, spreading disease because of what we did, so we need to worship the snake.
Oh, interesting.
I wonder if there's anything like that. It's like, and unfortunately we have no way of knowing that I'm aware of. It's just lost to history, but things like that seem to me would have been part of why they might have worshipped the coyote or the snake or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Because that's part of it, like, just as people would look at, like, some primitive, so-called primitive people, some things in religions or in the Bible, like you got the thing about God will spite your children and your children's children, or the sins of the father will be passed upon the kids. And it's like, whatever, that's so stupid. But now it's like, whoa, with epigenetics, it's like, that's, in a way, that's actually right. It's like, there's epigenetic influences that go down like 3 to 6 generations.
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa, that puts it in a whole different light,
Yeah.
Interesting stuff like that going on.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah. But, so have you anything more to add about what you like about tracking or game cams? I think we might have addressed that question a little bit, but anything more?
Yeah, I can't really think of anything to add to that. Maybe I will as we go along. But,
and what about, we had down here some of the questions I'm looking at. We had, are you certified in tracking and camera work? And then, like, what's all involved in the certification or in the tracking and the camera work? Anything else you want to add on that?
The CyberTracker stuff, I don't know how familiar your audience is. Have you taken CyberTracker?
Not yet. I need to. People are making me feel bad. I talked to...
Yeah, so... go ahead.
No, I've talked to a local, Bo Harger, recently. And he's like level 3, and you're making me feel bad and jealous and envious and wanting to do it and curious and all these good things. And he was too. And yeah, it's like... I can be kind of lazy. I need to do that, though. Sounds so interesting, being around people like that.
Yeah. So some people really love those. And in fact, they kind of get obsessed with CyberTracker, and they take exam after exam after exam. I wasn't one of those people. I just wanted my certification because I wanted to teach tracking. I lead, or well, actually, because of the pandemic, I'm not doing it now. But in the past years, I was leading tracking programs, and I just wanted some kind of credential for that. So I did. I took a CyberTracker exam, and the way it was it was 2 days out in the field where the examiner would find various, tracks or other kind of sign, and it can be absolutely anything. It doesn't have to be mammal sign. It could be bird sign, sometimes insect sign, and you would have to identify it. Or he would ask you it might be identification, or he might ask you some other question about it. And that's what it was, and then they tally it up at the end and give you a score. But it's also very educational because they will teach you a lot as you go through. So they tell you, for each one you do, it's not like you wait till the very end to find out the answers. They tell you, like, everybody writes down their answer for certain, for whatever the test question is. And then after everybody's put down their answer, they discuss it with you. They tell you what it is, and they discuss it and why it's this and not other things. So it is really good, and it's a good way of learning. For me, it's not my favorite way of learning, but I do highly recommend it. I don't have anything negative to say about it. I just, for some reason, didn't get hooked into that the way I know a lot of people do. Get really, really, into the CyberTracker stuff.
Mike, what do you mean?
I'm more inclined to just want to pursue whatever I'm interested in at the time, rather than have an examiner, be teaching me this, picking out the test questions and teaching me this stuff. I just like to go out and do it, and I often kind of have, in my head, I have goals set about what I'm going to learn. Like this last summer, I really wanted to improve my bear tracking skills, so I focused a lot on that, and I spent a lot of time tracking bears and just learning a lot more about the summer tracking sign. And one of the reasons I did that is that, so up here in the north, I live in Massachusetts, and because snow is such a great substrate, most people, including myself, when they track up here, only snow track. But that limits you to what happens in the winter, and animals have different behaviors in different seasons, and bears in particular are asleep in the winter, so you don't get to do too much bear tracking in the winter up here. But I really wanted to learn about bears, so I had to do that in the summer, and that's what I primarily focused on this past summer, and just learned a tremendous amount on my own. And to me, that's this sort of self-directed learning where I pick my own goals, and I just, pursue it to whatever degree I want to, is my favorite way of learning. But for those who like something more structured, and I'm kind of a loner. My husband and I go out and do track. Sometimes I track alone. I track with him. I track with a couple of friends. But I'm not like a big group type of person. But if you like that, if you want the the social milieu of a group of 10 or 12 people, whatever they have at those exams, and you like having the examiner teach you then and there, then that's a really good way to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one good thing about tracking. However you do it, a common principle, a common fact, is that you got to be independent and you got to like deal with reality. Unlike too much education influenced by Plato and some other bad philosophers, is to words divorced from reality, words with no meaning. Hence, it's a cliche. When are we ever going to use this? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
If it's not so much the content, like some people say they hate math or whatever. It's not the math. I think it's a problem. It's like how it's taught. But distinguishing
they might not see any relevance to them yet, you know. Yeah. But if you give them, if you put it in the context of something meaningful and practical to them, they might be interested in it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's one thing I think. Like some Plato and some others are missing about knowledge. It's not just some, and then the ancient Greeks in general. We had to learn. It's not their fault. It's where they were in history. But people had to learn that knowledge is a value component. It's a tool of survival. Getting that into education, that basic principle, I think would help it a lot.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I didn't see it that way when I was younger and my kids were little. I wish I had, but yeah. I totally agree with you that that's the better way to learn, is to allow them to kind of set their own goals and study whatever they're interested in at the time, whatever, you know, is meaningful to them at the time. And they'll learn it all. You know, they'll learn what they need to learn. We don't need to be, shoving facts down their throats.
Yeah. It's got to be a little of both. They need the guidance.
Yeah, a little
of both.
They
need the motivation.
Yeah.
Because I know that's one thing I see in a lot of people. Like students I work with, there's no way in hell they're going to know what's out there or what's available or what I could help them with, because they don't know. I used to not either. It's like, we don't know how things are connected or where something's going to lead. On our own, we need someone wiser to point that out for us. That's part of being human, I think.
Yeah, sure.
But, what are some of your favorite animals to track? Does it change?
Yeah, it changes. I don't really have favorite animals. I tend to, like I was just saying, the bears, I wanted to understand them better, their summer behavior better, so I spent a lot of time on them. And so for this past summer, they were my favorite. And then I switched to moose, became my favorite as the summer drew to a close, because I wanted to observe moose rutting behavior. And now that the rutting season is coming to a close, I'm going to focus more on fisher, because I have this goal that I want to learn more about fisher scent marking, and I want to find some of their scent posts and set cameras at them in the winter, because that's some things I'm wondering about with that. So that's how I tend to do it. I just kind of have my, obsession of the season, and I focus on that animal for a particular time. And then there's, I know that there are certain behaviors like that, like the otter is active at its discrete latrines in both the fall and the spring, so I tend to set up cameras at otter latrines in spring and fall, but they don't do that as much in the winter and summer, so I don't focus on them as much. So it's whatever. It changes over time with me. I have a real hankering to go travel more out west so I can learn more about species that we don't have here. In fact, I had plans to do that this year until the pandemic hit. So, I'm just really spending most of my time here in Massachusetts. But I really, really want to learn more about species that we don't have here, like wolves and cougars and badgers and prairie dogs and you name it. So many species that are out there that we don't have here.
Yeah. So you mentioned bear and moose, but could you tell folks what fisher is? People might not know that one. Everyone knows bear, everyone knows moose, but fisher?
Yeah, so, you guys wouldn't know that down, you're in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't know that in the South because it ranges only in the far north. It is like a big weasel. It's a member of the weasel family, and it weighs usually in the 10 to 15 pound range. It tends to be fairly uniformly black to dark brown, with some grizzling on the shoulders. It's a predator, has a really long tail. So and being in the weasel family, has a very long body and short legs. So that's the appearance. And It favors forested habitats, especially if there are a lot of mature trees and dead and dying trees with cavities in them, because it uses those cavities for breeding. And because it's a 10 to 15 pound animal, it needs a large cavity, and therefore it needs large trees in its forest. It also likes forests where there are lots of fallen logs, because in the wintertime it also uses resting spots under logs, and it also likes to hunt the various rodents that hide in and among logs. So that's the kind of habitat it likes. It's pretty well adapted for snowy conditions. It has, for its body size, it has fairly large feet so that it doesn't sink much in the snow, and it has a nice bushy fur to keep warm. So it's pretty much a northern creature.
What does it include in its diet?
A lot of overlap with the bobcat. Rabbits, squirrels, mice. It's one of the few species, however, that is very effective at hunting porcupines, which we have a lot of around here. The porcupine is well defended by its quills, but the fisher has a couple of different methods it uses that other animals aren't as good at. So what it does is, so the porcupine, if it's able to, it tends to climb a tree when it's scared. Well, that's one of the things it does. If there's no other place to hide, it will climb a tree, and then a fisher can continue chasing it, so the porcupine is forced to go further and further out on the limbs, and sometimes they fall out of the tree and get injured, and then the fisher can kill them that way. Fishers will, if the porcupine's on the ground, the fisher will kind of circle around it and try to injure its face. The porcupine, because it's got a lot of quills in the tail and the back, it keeps trying to spin around and face its back end to the fisher, but the fisher keeps chasing its face, and the porcupine can eventually bleed to death because of what the fisher's done to its face, and then it flips it over and opens it in the stomach where there are no quills. So they are fairly regular predators of porcupines. And not so likely to suffer from the quills, because they have an effective way of killing the porcupine.
And what are some other types of weasels besides the fisher?
Let's see. So we have two of the smaller weasel species. We have long-tailed and short-tailed weasels. In other parts of North America, there's something called a least weasel. And in other parts of the north that's not too far from us, like in the Adirondacks of New York and in Maine, they have something called a marten, which is similar to a fisher but smaller, much smaller. And it's also really, really adapted, even better adapted for deep snow conditions than the fisher. And it's more arboreal, spends more of its time in trees than fishers do. But hunts a lot of the same animals, small mammals, squirrels, mice, rabbits. And in the west, there's the badger, which is in the weasel family, although it looks a little bit different. It doesn't look so long and skinny. But that's an animal of open habitats, fields, desert, sagebrush desert. And they are expert diggers. They dig their dens in the ground, and they also, their favorite things to hunt are burrowing mammals. So they will dig for them, like they'll dig up prairie dogs, ground squirrels, kangaroo rats, and eat them. And sometimes they're hunting and digging their den at the same time. They dig up these burrowing mammals, and after they eat them, they just live in the hole. They sleep in the hole as their den. So they're super interesting.
Multitasking.
Super interesting animals. Huh?
Multitasking.
Yeah.
Very efficient.
Yeah. So I'd love to spend more time learning about them out west if I could get there.
How much does a porcupine weigh?
Probably on average, an adult is probably around 10 pounds, but they can get a lot bigger than that. Mm-hmm. That's just a guess. I'd have to look up exactly. But yeah, they're not huge. Smaller than beavers, but I believe they're the second biggest rodent in North America.
And what'd you learn about bears when you were studying them?
So, let's see. What did I learn about bears? I learned more. So you're probably familiar with, do you have bears where you are?
I think, thank goodness, some are making a comeback. I think black bear starting to return, maybe south of here in some places, and I think east and maybe west a little bit. Need to improve that, but I think they're making a comeback a little bit.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
So bears have these, what we call marking trees, where they typically in spring and summer they go to these trees and they bite them, claw them, and rub them, and it's pretty entertaining to watch on video what they do. And I knew what those looked like.
So it's not just in Disney movies?
It's not just in Disney movies. That's just Baloo. But that is sort of realistic.
Yeah.
And what I didn't really know that much about was, well, first of all, I never realized how common those trees were. I wasn't very good at identifying them. I got a lot more aware of those this summer because I was also trying to look for what's called bear stomp trails. There's a number of names for those. There's stomp trail, ritual trail, and marking trail, and mark trail. All mean the same thing. And those are trails where the bears, for whatever reason, step in the same spots all the time when they walk up and down those trails, so that it creates this pattern of worn out depressions that are kind of in an alternating pattern in the way that they walk. So I know you know what this is, but just for listeners, if they're not that familiar, I'm not sure if this is clear, so I just want to make sure I'm describing this accurately. So what I'm saying is each time a bear, regardless if it's a big bear or a little bear, they step in the same spots when they go down that trail. They put their feet in the same spots so that you see these worn-out ovals where their footfalls are. And it's in a zigzag pattern because that's the pattern that their tracks create when they walk. Mm-hmm. So it's actually really cool to see. If it's on like brown substrate like dirt or pine needles or something like that, they're hard to see because these worn-out areas are simply brown depressions. They're the same color as a substrate. But if it's in like a mossy substrate or some kind of low ground cover, some kind of green vegetation that's low growing like that, the worn areas are brown and they're surrounded by the green. So you literally see this pattern of brown ovals, zigzag of brown ovals in the green, and it's really kind of cool to find it. And I used to think, because I hadn't really done much bear tracking in summer, I used to think these things were rare. I never noticed them. And now I realize, having spent so much time in the summer, I realize how common they are. I'm finding them everywhere. Everywhere there are bears. And and the reason I never saw them in the fall is as soon as the leaves fall here, they cover everything up, so you wouldn't see those depressions. And, of course, in the wintertime, the bears are asleep. So I just couldn't believe it. I thought these were kind of rare, these, not very commonly seen things, but I have found them now, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 different places around here. So that's been cool. And using the cameras, I learned that when the bears use those trails, it's kind of, I should mention for people that when they do that, this behavior is thought to be a form of scent marking. They're marking the ground with scent from the bottoms of their feet. And they use kind of a funny gait. They sometimes kind of stomp into those worn ovals or kind of rub their feet into them as they walk, so their gait looks different. And what I didn't realize until I started putting cameras up is that it's kind of a whole complex behavior, kind of ritual that they do where they rub they do the tree thing. They rub and bite and claw at the tree, and then they'll go walk up and down the stomp trail using that funny gait. And sometimes there's other forms of scent marking going on there too. Like if there's a little pool of water, they might go for a dip in the pool of water and rub their head against the bank of the pool, and that's additional scent marking. And they might do these things repetitively. So it's just been really cool. Like it opened up a whole new world to see it on video and to realize that these just aren't like separate little things that they're doing. The tree and the trail and rubbing the head on the bank of the pool. It's it's like a whole sequence. It's, I guess, like the way I think of it as like each one separately is like a word, and the whole thing together is a paragraph.
Part of
it's
like
a whole complex, complex communication that
whole single ritual.
We don't understand it. Yeah, a whole ritual. It's which is pretty cool. I mean, I don't know.
But
I think that was what my. Go ahead. What?
Fortunately, we're learning. Some people are learning more of that nowadays. Unfortunately, it wasn't longer ago, but more about animal consciousness, animal communication. And I guess part of it comes about from people with some bad, illogical, wrong ideas like Descartes, I think the Stoics, not thinking that animals didn't have a consciousness, or like Descartes or B.F. Skinner, they were merely machines, or Skinner, consciousness didn't matter. I haven't looked into the Stoics. I'm not sure exactly to what extent they believe that. But there's influences in the culture from that have really impaired Western history. Every culture has good things and bad things, and is even with us today, some of the bad stuff. But thankfully, there's more being learned about how some crows have funerals, elephants have funerals, and can kind of get the idea of a burial site. Chimpanzees can engage in complex behaviors and thinking so they can hunt monkeys. You can have a team of like 5 or 6 or more deciding ahead of time what they're going to do. Having roles and going after the monkeys and catching them and being able to adapt to changes and things. A lot more of that going on. So it's like, unfortunately, there's still some of the idea that animals are stupid. We're humans. We're so smart.
It's kind of go ahead.
Okay. Some people are smart if we realize our whole human nature and be that way. But being human as such doesn't make you better than other animals. We got to actualize our nature, not just let it kind of be their potential like mush. But we have the potential to do a lot, but we also have the potential to be worse since we have free will. Animals are true to their nature. Some people can be less than the nature, abominations of nature, and human history unfortunately shows that. But it's nice seeing how it's interesting. Some of these behaviors, as you say, people might have thought are in isolation, how there's actually this whole longer ritual. All this stuff is actually connected with the black bear. That's interesting. Fascinating.
It's just related to what you say. I always found it fascinating that in science, when people do animal studies in science, the burden of proof is on those who say that animals do have some emotion or do have this or that ability to reason, rather than those who say that they don't. Which is, it's interesting. You have to start somewhere, right? It's not like there's nothing inherently correct about saying, well, we have to start with the assumption that animals can't do any of these things and show that they do. It would be just as reasonable to say we should start with the assumption that they do have these emotions, they can feel happy, they can solve problems. The reason I think it would be just as reasonable to start that way is that we evolved from animals. We have common ancestors, and it's not likely that humans are inherently different and just kind of, came from nothing. It's much more likely that we have a lot of genes in common with other animals, so it's much more likely that they have the genes for similar behaviors and abilities. I don't know if I'm wording this well.
Sounds good to me.
If that makes sense. Okay, it made some sense.
But I think it's not
I don't
merely...
know why we start with the assumption that they're inherently different from us, is what I'm saying, when we're genetically so closely related.
Bad philosophy. A lot of the philosophical influences, like some things I mentioned earlier. And then it's a big deal. Like one prime thing is getting the philosophy of science right and getting epistemology right. There's a lot of bad ideas about epistemology in the culture, and to some extent, it makes sense because it's like epistemology and the nature of science is very complex and complicated to get it right. I sure the hell wouldn't even know where to start. The only reason I know what I do now is from studying what other people have said about it and studying some history of science. Otherwise, I would be clueless. And I know from my own personal history how it was like 40 years ago versus now. And there's like it's really difficult to figure out, really complex, but we still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
People are still, because it's so complex, people still have to figure out how exactly science works and what good epistemology is. And we're learning, we've made tremendous progress. Look at Ptolemy, for example, versus Kepler, Copernicus, Newton. Newton, Copernicus, Kepler had to not merely function as scientists; they had to function as They had to function as philosophers and epistemologists to figure out how we know. How do we know this stuff? And that's like Kepler actually titled one of his books "A New Astronomy," based on causes to differentiate it from Ptolemy, which is merely mathematical description. And like some of the ancient Greeks thought that perception, and it's a long story as to why, but they thought perception could not be the root for concepts. But Newton and Galileo, they were finding out that no, following Aristotle and developing what not even Aristotle had fully developed yet, that concepts are based on perception. I mean, Aristotle knew that, but they figured out things about induction, how we generalize, that even Aristotle hadn't. And that's how they were able to get modern science going. But we need to get more lessons from that and see that science is really based on the evidence of the senses. And if you look at the evidence of the senses, animals have emotion and have intelligence. And it's a big picture view, as you say, with like evolution. It's not like, oh, the evidence of the senses makes it seems like the sun's going around the earth. Well, no, because if you look at more evidence of the senses stuff, motion is relative. When things are moving, A could be moving and B could be still. B could be moving and A could be still. They could both be moving. Copernicus pointed that out. But it's not just like we think animals are consciousness, just like we think the sun goes around the earth. It's an entirely different situation. There's a lot more very integrated conceptual theory about animals having intelligence, being able to think, not conceptually, but they can think, they can have emotion. So I think it's like the only valid. I don't think it's valid to say they're machines. That's such a denial of so much stuff. So I think you're like way, way more right beyond what that other claim can ever be.
Well,
I mean, look at your cat. Look at my cat. Look at your cat. It's not a machine. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah, anybody who has a close relationship with an animal knows that. Yeah. Were you a history major? Is that your field, or
a degree in math?
Background?
Degree in math and a degree in philosophy.
Oh, math and philosophy. Interesting. Oh, how interesting. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's great.
That's neat. That's really cool.
But yeah, just this and that led me to study a little history of science. I'd like to do more.
Yeah.
Always more to do.
Very
just
cool.
like I can't watch your videos enough. I wish I had more time. Some of the stuff you post, I want to watch, but it's like, pull myself away. I need to do other stuff.
Yeah, I could spend all my time on the internet and on YouTube too. It's like at some point you have to just do the basic things of life. But yeah,
like you,
so much to learn.
You just got to get out there and do your dirt time.
Yeah, exactly.
Just experiencing it and doing it and being it. That's the fundamental, as you pointed out earlier. It's the important thing.
Yeah.
I'm like the same.
Yeah.
But so you were talking about the black bear and all this stuff. Anything else you want to add to that? Like how the things are connected? Figured out much about the rituals, or?
Let's see. Oh, the another thing I learned in camera trapping bears, I wasn't aware of this through tracking, is that some of these bear marking trees and some scent stations of other species become multi-species scent stations. So, I had some cameras out in Montana, and I found that a wolf, the wolves always walk by the bear tree. One time they stopped and peed on it. Cougar was sniffing it. The local moose and deer would sniff it. So there was, I hadn't really been thinking about it, or I hadn't been aware, or it hadn't occurred to me that there's a lot of interspecies communication going on too, which kind of makes sense because you need to know, other animals, other species can be dangerous to you or beneficial to you. So the more you're able to kind of be aware of and process their information, then the more successful you're going to be. So that's really, and I would never know that through tracking. Like, say I'm just, working on learning about bear sign, I'd learn how to identify a bear marking tree and a bear stomp trail, but I wouldn't know like all the different things that happen there until I put cameras up and see.
Yeah, like you might be able to find the bear sign on a tree and some moose track nearby, but what did they do? Why was it here? What happened?
Yeah, and you only find those tracks there if you happen to be there, like, shortly after the end, the moose or the wolf came. But, if you leave a camera up for a year at a certain spot, you get to see all of the animals that interact with that bear tree or with that bobcat scrape or whatever scent station you're targeting. And it's the same. I learned the same thing with like a lot of fisher scent marking areas will be scent marked by other animals too. So there's a lot of interspecies stuff going on, and we don't really, biologists aren't really studying that very much. They study communication, particularly scent communication, but communication in general within a species. But what about all the communication that's going on between species? We don't participate so much in that because we now, being such a technological society, we've kind of divorced ourselves from all of that wild stuff, and we kind of live in parallel to it. Most of us do anyway. But other species are still very much interconnected and use each other for food and so forth. So, or get used as food. So they need to be much more attuned to the other species, and it does appear, from what I see happening at scent stations, that there is a lot of awareness between species, not just within a species.
And so it's not like when a wolf overscents on a bear, it's trying to compete, but maybe it's just saying, I'm here also, we have a co-boundary or something like that.
Yeah, who knows what they're saying? I don't know. I mean, even for the bear, for the bear marking tree in particular, it's not even territorial within the species. That's not a territorial thing that the bears are doing. It's more like a message board where bears in the area all mark on the same one. It's not a territorial thing. So who knows what it means for each other species? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why are they marking on it? I don't know.
That's why I like, for example, there's others, but I like the work of Baron Heinrich. He does some of that.
Yeah. I've read one of his books. Yeah.
Yeah, listened to a lot of his on Audible. It's like.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I read his one on the Winter book last year.
Oh yeah. I've listened to Winter World, Summer World, The Mind of the Raven. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew, but he's actually in the still, even though what I think is in his 80s now, he's still in the top 10 in the United States for 50-mile run, 100-mile run, and 24-hour run.
Wow.
So all the books he does, and he's a world-class biologist, but whoa, he's actually like a world-class like runner too.
World-class everything. Don't tell me he's an opera singer too. Probably is.
But
concert
so
pianist.
Cool. Or he was nice enough to be on a podcast one time, and he said that sometimes, he'll actually hang one armed 100 feet up in a tree. But he doesn't just do it just to do it. He does it because that's the only thing he can do to look at a bird nest and study some of like a bird and get some of the information he needs.
Wow. Oh my God. That is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And he said, I think one thing I read, he was, when he was getting his PhD, I think he wrote a paper. He was still a student. I think it was about how the moth cools off, a thermoregulation thing. And he disagreed with the leading authority in the world about that.
Yeah.
And his paper was rejected, and it was rejected by that person. So he wrote, I mean, can you imagine you're a student? If it's rejected, you're probably going to say, well, I'm probably wrong, and da-da-da. You know, a lot of people would be like that. But he actually wrote and demanded it be published and stuff, and they checked into it, and sure enough, they looked into it and stuff, and it was published, and he was right. Yeah.
Wow.
So
very impressive. I think if I get to do life again, I'd want to be him.
Yeah, right. That's a good idea. Wow. I was thinking, but I want to come back as a bobcat, but I want to come back as a fisher. No, let's come back as Bear Heinrich. Yeah. True. Amazing.
Very impressive. Yeah.
Kind of like Richard Feynman was pretty impressive too.
Yeah. I actually think Mark Elbrock is really amazing. Have you had him on your podcast yet?
No, I'll have to do that. Yeah. So many people.
You should get him.
Cool.
Yeah, he's a really amazing person too.
Oh, he does more than tracking?
Well, he's a mountain lion biologist.
Yeah.
But
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think he kind of epitomizes to me like someone who can do all of the necessary aspects for wildlife biology. He's great scientifically. He can handle the sort of physical outdoor part of it, as well as interact effectively with the public, because a lot of dealing with large carnivores is human-wildlife conflict and dealing with people's complaints and so forth. And he seems to be able to manage all of that.
Cool. Nice.
Which is, I find, extremely impressive.
Yeah, true.
I think the people part of it would drive me insane. The kind of crazy beliefs that people have about large carnivores. But he goes with it. He's up for the challenge. It's pretty amazing.
Cool. Thanks for the suggestion and reminder. I'll have to.
Yeah, try to get him. He's great. He also recently published a book on mountain lions, so he's probably going to want to promote it. So
cool.
He may want to do it. Yeah.
Cool. Good. But before we forget about the bears, like, what are the different things you say the bears do, and they're just like sentences, like words making up a sentence?
Oh, I was just sort of pointing out that, like, I hadn't realized before I saw it on camera how their different scent marking things are all used in connection rather than just isolated. I wasn't thinking that it could be that, you know, maybe things mean different when they're in different combinations or used together as opposed to when they're used separately. Just like we can assemble words and sentences for different meanings, you know what I mean? I wasn't thinking of scent marking in that way at all until I watched what bears do.
And what are the different things that are strung together that they do?
Well, so I had these two cameras in Montana. One was facing the bear marking tree, and another one was facing a spring where there was a pool of water, and they were literally like, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet apart. And so with the help of the two cameras, I could see a bear traveling between those two things and doing his scent marking in two different places and using a stomp trail in between them. And then there was also, I hadn't realized it, but there was another smaller marking tree also near there. So he had the two trees, the pool, and the stomp trails, and he was just kind of doing this thing going between them. And that was the one bear. Some bears came by and just did one thing or two things, but this bear was making a whole, you know, complex. And I was thinking, well, does that mean something different if they're doing it? You know what I mean? Is it just a difference in intensity? I kind of think there might be more to it than that, because bears are known to be so intelligent that maybe it means something different when they do them group these different kind of scent marking behaviors together.
So it'd be the tree,
I don't know,
the stomping, and the water.
Yeah, he would be in the pool. But bears love to take baths in pools of water. But this one was also like rubbing its head on the bank of the little pool in a similar way that they rub their heads on trees. And then there was a second tree in there also, and he was kind of rotating between those things as opposed to just doing one and moving on. Some of the bears would just take a dip in the pool and go, and some of them would just rub the tree and go. But this one was kind of making a whole a more elaborate thing out of it, and it just started making me wonder that maybe this is a lot more complicated than we realize.
Mm-hmm. Would he?
And who knows?
Is there one thing he'd do first? Would he do the pool and then the tree, or the tree and then the pool?
Well, that particular bear went into the pool first. Yeah, that's what he did, and then he rubbed his head on the bank, and then stomped to one of the trees, did the whole marking behavior at the tree, stomped to the other tree and did the whole marking behavior there, and then stomped back to the first tree and marked that one, stomped again, and left finally. But I had never seen it. I just wouldn't even, it wouldn't occur to me that it would be this whole complex thing strung together as opposed to just, separate little behaviors where, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So made me think about, just sort of forced me to to consider the possibility that there's a more complex level of this than we know.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that's a bunch of BS. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, have to figure it out. But I wonder if that's kind of the case. What do you think it might be in terms of like something a person might do? Or would you need more time to think about that? Is that like...
Yeah, I need more time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. Because there's something like you might consider going in the door, putting down your keys, taking off your shoes, putting down your briefcase or something like that. A whole sequence of kind of connected things in a certain order you do it in. Because putting down the keys and opening the door aren't in isolation. I don't know. I'm just...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
possibilities
that's
right now.
Too great a comparison because those are sort of utilitarian things that you're doing, whereas the scent marking stuff isn't.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Just thinking, I'm not saying it's a case. Plus, it's like a different kind of purpose. I'm just thinking about...
Yes, it's different purpose. It's more each of the different things that the bears do are part of scent communication. So it probably, I don't know. I draw the analogy between, to human language because that's how we communicate mostly is with language, whereas bears are using scent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I just sort of made that metaphor of, word versus sentence versus paragraph. But who knows? Who knows what they're doing?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a lot of communication going on that's not really that conscious for them. That's just they do it for whatever reason. They do it because they rub the tree because they're itchy, but it also communicates information to other bears without the one that leaves the scent really being conscious that he's leaving that information. We don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. That's one thing that's cool about all this biology.
Yeah.
Calculus is easy. Biology is complex.
Calculus has clear answers, right? Specific answers. Yeah.
And it doesn't change or adapt or have a personality.
Or evolve, yeah. It doesn't.
Right. Or it doesn't have to do something new when some new animal comes into your environment or something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to adapt to environmental change.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah. But, well, let's see. Your phone might be about dying. My brain's been dying. I've been wanting some coffee for the last 40 minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, this wouldn't be a bad time to wrap up as far as I'm concerned.
Cool. Anything else you want to say to folks about stuff we said so far? Certification, tracking, game cams, anything? Bears, bobcats?
No, I guess I'm good. If you have any last questions.
Where's my coffee?
Oh. All right. Well, I can't help you with that one.
Yeah. But, cool. Good conversation. A lot more we can talk about.
Great.
Be nice to dig into
Yeah,
bobcats more since they're around here, or coyotes and stuff. But for the future, hopefully we can do this again. But,
all right. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thank you.
And,
Appreciate your time.
Take care, Mike.
Okay, you too. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.